So I'm here on My Magical Thing with Laetitia Barbier, professional tarot reader, teacher, program director, and head librarian at Morbid Anatomy. Laetitia, it's lovely to have you here.
Well, thank you so much, Julian. I'm really, really honored to be here with you. Really.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time to show us your magical thing, at which point I must ask, Laetitia, may we see your magical thing?
Absolutely. Here it is. It's many magical things tied into one, but today I'm going to talk about just one of them. So this is a necklace that I made for myself. It's kind of my Swiss Army knife of amulets, so to speak, and I wear it regularly. But and I've wore those different elements at different times of my life. Just to show you the whole thing, I'll start with this one. You have a tiny skull made out of that is carved out of a pearl. You have a Manufiga, which unfortunately this one is made out of coral. Didn't survive my bouncings. This very strange and rather risque Thai amulet. It's definitely tourist trade amulet, but I bought it in Thailand, and it's showing a woman being pleasured by many phalluses, I guess you could say that. When you can't see on camera because her facial expression is one of pure ecstasy, which I found very funny. But today I'm going to focus on this object, which is the most special of them all. And I know some of you might probably cringe, right? Just like the vampires here might cringe, like, oh my God, a cross. But this is really the most magical thing I have among all the things I have. And if I, like one of those things where like, if I'm asked the question, like, what if your house burned down? What would you bring? I will bring that and my passport and my teddy bear, and then the rest can burn down and I'll just survive. But this is very important. This is obviously it's a Christian cross. It's a Catholic cross. It's two-sided. It's made out of brass, and it's very old. I don't really know exactly when it was made. I'm guessing in sometime 19th century. You can see, so you have the Christ in the front with a memento mori at the bottom. And then behind it, you have this figure, which for me, it's a Virgin Mary, but it looks very specifically like a Black Madonna. If you know the Black Madonna, this one looks very much like the one in France in Puy-en-Velay. That's the one that I figured might be the closest one visually, and you can see that maybe a little bit, but the patina is extraordinary. You can't see the detail of their face because somehow it either has been robbed or kept, or just like it's been close to human contact for a very long time. So this cross is something that my mother gave me. It has been in my family apparently for a generation, and I got it early 2004, 2005 when my grandmother Jeanne passed away. In my mother side of the family, my mom, my grandparents, my great grandparents, and my uncle, and a lot of family members, they were carnies. They actually had my uncle until very recently had bumper cars. They had bumper cars in the 60s and 50s, and they had other type of I don't think they had carousel, but there was this very interesting story in my family. Apparently my great grandfather was a fake healer. In French we call that a rebouteur. It's like a fake magnet, Reiki master. He was basically seeing people and then kind of doing the waves, and then people will be healed, but like at the dinner table at night they were basically saying, those, like he was some kind of trickster. Side of the family, I don't really know very well because they were also a complicated bunch. But what I know about that cross, so when my grandmother died, I inherited that cross and then a couple of black and white photos from the 60s that are very, very cool. And of course, my grandmother died very poor, and she lived an entire life in her caravan. And so when I was a kid, it was very funny to go in the caravan. She was always dressed with like this leopard shirt, she had golden teeth, and she had this crazy panther gold necklace. And so there was no real indication that she was a Catholic in any way. And and no real connection to that stuff either, you know. And so when my mom gave me that cross, I was really puzzled. And she told me, so that cross is very special because it belonged to the family for many, many years. And apparently, because the family didn't have a bank account, they had a money box. And the money box had the crucifix in it to protect the money. And so that's the function of that crucifix at the beginning, was to protect the money. And so that's the story I have for it. And so when I was, I was in my very early 20s when I got it, and I started to wear it casually. I was a goth, so, like a big golden cross that fit perfect. Yeah. But as I started to wear it, first it was a piece, like it was such an intriguing piece, because it's something, the object, and I go to a lot of flea markets, I know antiques, but I've never seen any equivalent of that cross. And so it sparkled a lot of conversation among people who were very curious about the object itself. But as I was wearing it casually, a lot of things started to happen to me, not necessarily good things, but things that were important, like I managed to escape from, weird traps, a really bad situation because of it, or things happened very serendipitously. And I couldn't explain, but it just started, like, the things that had I was able to recognize that somehow that object had power. And I'm just going to stop for a second and say, well, at this point, I had a magical practice, but it was very loose, and it was mostly centered around tarot reading for myself. I was not a professional at that point. And also spell work and altar making. I've had a relationship with magic from a very long time. One of the objects I wanted to show actually is the wands I did when I was 11 with quartz and elder. But I thought, well, this is a better story. The cross is a better story. But I didn't really, it was very spontaneous and very idiosyncratic. And I was not, I was not trying to study any specific practice. It came very naturally. But at that point, when I started to wear that cross, I thought something started to shift. And I had to recognize that maybe the cross and the people who owned it at some point, whether it was my grandmother or the generation before, even if I didn't met some of them, were trying to kind of like gently move my shoulder and put me just like, oh no, don't take that road, or to sign that thing, not that thing. And so I felt really compelled to recognize that object was somehow possessed by what I believe would be ancestral power. But here's the catch. I'm an adopted child. And I had, a lot of identity problem until, in my young adulthood, because I learned very recently that I'm actually biracial. My brother is Colombian, and my parents were my parents, but they didn't give birth to me and my brother. So technically my mother's family is not my bloodline. And I was always fascinated by all this like carny stuff, and I kind of romanticized it a lot when I was a teen. But I couldn't reclaim it because they were not my ancestors, and then for me that idea of ancestral worship was this kind of like, I had a stump, or rather I had a rootless trunk to work with. And I was just like, I don't really know if that's for me, and somehow by owning that object, I started to recognize that maybe those people that I've never met, we were very similar, like they were kind of, like just being a carny in the 40s is not in Burgundy, in rural France, is not a very prototypical trade. And I felt like it's a trade that must have been chosen for, I believe, because of a very specific idea of freedom. And I think that somehow, because of that, and because of other things, like that, there is a part of that bloodline that wants to kind of connect. One of the things that also that objects really allowed me to understand is I was raised a Catholic, but my parents were not really religious, and I just kind of, I went for the occult stuff, like putting the Catholic heritage in the carpet for a very long time. But then and I always collected Catholic sacred objects, and I've always went to churches because they felt very special to me. And then it took me a kind of a long time to realize that if you like, you know, like my grandparents, they were not Catholic, but they used the visual vocabulary of that religion to do something else with it. And not only they were doing this, but a lot of people are doing this. People in Mediterranean, in Italy, in Mexico. And I think Mexico was really the big, you know, the big reveal. Just like, you know, people go to church, but the magic they do in their house with saints and syncretized, you know, Aztec / you know, Catholic saint. Those are things, and I got to see stuff that were very strange and completely casual. I was like, okay, so people do this. Maybe I should try. You know, I should not deny this, because apparently some other generation in my family were doing this. They were not really questioning the practicality of putting, you know, like a very important Catholic icon in a money box for good luck or for protection. For them, it was just an instinct. And I think what that object did was kind of tie me back to that instinct of using what I know and love without trying to look for the exotic. And for me, the exotic is what you guys have, the British, you know, high magic ceremonial stuff. Hence the, you know, 11-year-olds, you know, like magic wand with the quartz, you know. I actually could find the substrate of what would become my practice, and the things that I've always kind of gravitated around, but never really allowed myself to retrieve or connect to. And so this is it. This is my magical thing.
Laetitia, that's fantastic. Could we have another look at this
Yeah.
great carrier of lineage, this key to the lineage of discovering the magic where perhaps we've overlooked it or where we least expect it, and the magic of taking those belief structures and finding our own way to be in that, particularly as people who aspire to a degree of freedom and autonomy. That is a beautiful object, my friend.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for having me around, showing off my bling.
Well, may it serve you very, very well. Laetitia, thank you so much. I'll see you soon.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.